In today's video, we're doing a layman's review of the ProArt 6K display, the PA32QCV. While it's not an Apple Pro Display XDR, and we'll explain why, we'll notice that as long as we don't directly compare it to the Pro Display XDR, we'll be mostly happy. I have some thoughts on the LuxPixel coating. I also have some thoughts on how that impacts the sharpness of the 6K image. We'll talk about the LuxPixel coating and its impact on the 6K resolution, design, size, brightness and HDR capabilities, brightness uniformity, contrast, color accuracy, connectivity, ergonomics, price with a stand included, and subjective comforts like power on speed and menu responsiveness. The packaging is straightforward. The packaging reminds me of Dell's. With both, you get a cardboard cover with the cables and manuals on top of it. Included is the screen, the stand, everything is straightforwardly packaged. Included is a power cable, a Thunderbolt 4 cable, an HDMI cable, and a polishing cloth, as well as a piece of paper convincing you you've spent your money well. Once you plug it in, I noticed that the Asus ProArt 6K likes to take its time to power on. It's not as easy as the Pro Display XDR. To power this on, you need to hold the power button, let it set up, let it think a little, take its time, and then it lets you know when it's ready to display your image. This is in contrast to the Pro Display that you plug in and it instantly recognizes your computer. Why do I nitpick about a 5 to 10 second difference? People spend thousands of dollars on expensive PCs to make everyday tasks faster, and this is no exception. If you use a laptop and plug it in and unplug it a few times a day, these seconds will add up, and the Pro Display is much faster at displaying an image. Here is a clip. The ProArt display looks and feels professional. It's made of plastic, but it's nice plastic. The bezels are competitively thin compared to other screens, but on that note, Asus is one of the few remaining manufacturers that vainly stamp their logo on the bottom chin. Apple and Dell have both sacrificed their logos for a cleaner user experience and better looking screens. The stand is sturdy and reliable, and I like the label they put on the stand. It's a nice touch. I like the menu buttons, but don't know if I like their positioning. They're easier to reach, but you're staring at them all the time. I do have to point out one flaw. Side by side with the XDR, can you see it? Just like on the Dell 4K Thunderbolt screen, the cutout on the stand is too low, so you will be able to see all of your cables unless you mount this on a monitor arm. Assuming you don't mind the added bezel for the Asus logo and buttons, this design feels professional. The ProArt 6K is actually smaller than 32 inches at 31.5 inches. The size of the bezels actually makes the ProArt 6K feel bigger than other screens, and you won't be thinking to yourself that the screen is too small. Its thickness is comparable to the Dell 4K, which also has a plastic shell. Both the ProArt and Dell screens are thin around the borders, thinner than the XDR, but then curve and have thick bulges in the middle. Pro Display XDR, in comparison, is a uniformly thin, engineered slab of glass and aluminum that's slightly thicker at the bezels, but is that same thickness throughout the whole display and doesn't have a thick bulge in the middle. In terms of panel size, I firmly believe 32 inches is one of the best sizes for productivity, and I explain why in this video, which can be found on my channel and linked below. The Asus ProArt has a resolution of 6K, which is 13 million more pixels than a 4K display has. When you first get the display, you want to sit up close to take it in. When you do, you're going to notice a weird glimmer, especially on light images, and then you end up doing research and learn that Asus adds what they call LuxPixel to make the screen more paper-like. It takes a lot of getting used to, and this coating is aggressive compared to others such as Dell screens. Dell screens also achieve a paper-like effect without a weird glimmer effect up close on light images. There's also a residual effect on your eyes when you look away of everything glimmering after using this screen. As a result, while this monitor is 6K, LuxPixel detracts from the sharpness, and while LuxPixel helps fight glare and uneven lighting in bright rooms, the 6K resolution does not feel as sharp as it normally would like on a Pro Display XDR. I think Asus needs to borrow a note from Dell's book, because Dell makes 4K feel sharper than it is rather than losing clarity through some dark magic, as shown in my video covering their Thunderbolt display. That video is available on my channel and is linked in the description as well. I found that setting the display via the menu to a sharpness setting of 10 helps combat the LuxPixel coating effect. Obviously, this might impact the accuracy of your image. All in all, if you use this ProArt screen in a bright room like I do, you might get used to the coating quickly and appreciate the measures Asus takes against ambient light. But if you're looking for the crispest possible 6K experience, this might not be it. To get the brightness fully working on macOS and Better Display, you have to hop into the Better Display settings and set the brightness value to 400. But my god, the 400 nits feels closer to 500, and while I don't have a tool to measure brightness, it feels substantially brighter than what 400 nits normally feels like, and I think they're underreporting the brightness this can achieve. This ProArt doesn't arbitrarily limit its brightness, unlike the XDR. So while on spec sheets it achieves, in quotes, only 400 nits of brightness, in practice the ProArt actually gets brighter than the XDR in standard use in a room with dark lighting, while the XDR is busy limiting itself. When you're viewing HDR videos on something like the XDR automatically detects HDR, and the content plays perfectly. On the ProArt, you have to go into settings and toggle HDR for HDR to apply. Otherwise, videos play in standard dynamic range, and the toggle is something nobody is going to do on a daily basis. To be frank, my experience on the ProArt was lackluster when it came to HDR. This is a nice screen for color accuracy and representation and resolution and maybe everyday use, but HDR is not it. This won't translate well on video, but let's take a look anyway at the sunset on the XDR and ProArt. The software auto-detects a high resolution and picks HDR on the XDR. It picks 4K and gives no HDR options on the ProArt. I have to go to settings, toggle HDR, then refresh the page on the ProArt. The sunset blows you away with 1600 nits on the XDR, while the ProArt only peaks at 600. We don't perceive brightness linearly, so while 1600 is 2.6 times 600, it doesn't look 2.6 times brighter on the XDR, but boy can you tell a difference, and that difference is substantial. All in all, the ProArt is a solid display for daily use, but don't expect to be blown away by HDR photos or videos. Some notes during editing. I just wanted to insert some clips of LuxPixel, how aggressively it's smeared on, impacting the quality of the image. On light spots, it's very grainy, even more grainy and even more so than regular matte screens. You notice, I don't know if pixelation is the right word, but it's like almost smeared on. You can really see it from angles. I don't know if it was just my ProArt 6K display, but I experienced brightness uniformity issues. The left side of the ProArt 6K was noticeably brighter than the right side. The right side also had a bluish tint. These effects, when combined, caused my eyes to have to adjust, not between monitors, but between different portions of the same monitor on a momentary basis. It's ironic because the XDR has a very mild vignette effect, and the ProArt display has the exact opposite problem. While the XDR is slightly too dark at the edges, the ProArt display is slightly too bright at the top edge namely. You can see the band up at the top of the ProArt. Here's the top edge of the XDR in comparison. The ProArt display has a typical backlight mechanism, and as such, achieves a typical contrast ratio of 1500:1 and a max contrast ratio of 3000:1, as listed on the spec sheet. It's not going to disappoint, but is also not next level like on the XDR. I wonder if Asus will make a ProArt version like their other display with thousands of dimming zones. I would pay for that without a LuxPixel coating. I'm not a photographer nor a color professional, so I'll just say they include a calibration spec sheet and the colors look nice. No complaints. Here are its advertised specs, and I will let channels with colorimeters or extensive test materials confirm them. The ProArt has great connectivity with a Thunderbolt hub built in. It has two Thunderbolt 4 ports with 96 watt power delivery on the main port, so you can connect your laptop with one cable, charge it, and daisy chain additional Thunderbolt devices to the other port. It also has a DisplayPort 1.4 with display stream compression, one HDMI 2.1, two USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, two USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type C ports, a headphone jack, a built-in auto KVM switch, and picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture support. The ProArt has great adjustability. They engineered the stand very well, excluding where they put the cutout. It tilts from 23 degrees to -5. It swivels 30 degrees in either direction. It can rotate up to 90 degrees, so you can use this in landscape or portrait if you want to. The height can be adjusted from 0 to 130 millimeters. The ProArt is VESA mountable without adding any accessories and uses a 100 by 100 bolt pattern. The VESA mounting points are recessed into the case, so not all adapters will fit. The ProArt was $13.99 at the time of this review. For roughly a fifth of the cost, you get roughly 50% of the Pro Display XDR's value. This is obviously a crass estimation and oversimplified because some people require high-end features like HDR and anything less than that is 0%, but for most people, roughly stated, you get roughly 50% of the value. You don't get the same HDR experience, nor is the 6K glossy, nor is it as crisp or sharp, and you get a slightly slower power on, but you get more connectivity. You get a resolution that's still better than 5K or 4K like on other screens, and even if it's not as crisp, you get a solid, bright screen you can enjoy using every day in a bright room if you don't mind LuxPixel. While OLED screens are getting better every day, I stick by my words in another video I made about the shortcomings of OLED. If you're going to display a taskbar or dock or menu bar every day on an OLED screen, you will get burn-in. Therefore, I'm very glad that manufacturers are still investing in IPS, mini LED, micro LED, quantum dot displays, and whatever else they're coming up with that are more classic, normal technologies that don't sacrifice reliability for progress. I might be in the minority, but I'll gladly pay more for an expensive IPS screen than pay $1.5 grand every year or year and a half when I have to toss out the old OLED screen because it has burn-in. There are things that you can do to mitigate burn-in, but at the end of the day, performing those measures and workarounds every day gets in the way of actually doing your work and being productive. I think it's great that companies other than Apple are making 6K displays at more affordable price points, especially because you might want the 6K resolution and color accuracy without wanting to pay for the brightness, contrast, or HDR capabilities, or 576 dimming zones, and a $1,000 solid machined stand. I love all of the connectivity and port options and modern features the Asus ProArt 6K display includes. I love that it's much more affordable than a Pro Display XDR. While I'm decently content with the ProArt 6K and what it can do, there are obviously still things it can't do that the Pro Display does that goes above and beyond. Also, when you spend extra money, you get better quality control, something that became apparent during this review when I observed brightness uniformity issues. With everything said, I don't think the ProArt is intended to compete directly with Apple, but rather slide in at a more affordable price point while still delivering a 6K panel with good colors at a fraction of the price. If interested in either display, both are linked in the description via affiliate links.